you didn't know? Your ass better call somebody.
The energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, reppin' both hoods. Rob and CP, keep it fire, misunderstood. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline greens, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. Rob hype on the mic, CP's the fire spark. Together they ignite, voices light the park. Fans drift in jerseys, legacy bold. The Metropolitan story forever told. Turnstile spinning, the crowd floods the gates. This is family, no time for debates. Crack of the Batman, the roar never fades. Queens in the blood, it's how champions are made. Cheer 'em all loud, let the anthem flow. Mets fans unite at the pregame show. From city stand lights to the skyline gleams, it's the heartbeat of Queens, the craziest dreams. 7-line swagger, vibes electric and wild. Mets legacy golden since I was a child. Orange crushed skies, let the battle ignite. Ride for the home team till the last fight.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the Amazing Mets pregame show right here on the channels and on X. Mets fans, how was that walk-off win by Jeff McNeil last night as the Mets win 5-4, coming back home playing the Nationals in game one of this series? That was frustrating nonetheless, but eventually we got the win. And once again, Chris, the late inning heroics from this New York Mets team as they are now 19 games over 500. How you doing, buddy?
You know what is better than 19 games over 500? It's 20 games over 500, like we're going to be talking about tonight, potentially them improving to. So, yeah, it was an electric victory. I had a little bit of pessimistic thoughts early on in the game, especially with the way that Mackenzie Gore looked early on and them continuing to score runs off of Griffin Canning, who didn't really have his best stuff. But, you know, the offense and Griffin Canning battled, so credit to him. The bullpen was electric, you know, shut down performances by multiple guys in this bullpen, and the offense was up to the task late. And what do we say in the pregame? You can get to this Nationals bullpen. They do not have good numbers in general, and they got the job done. And really good to see Jeff McNeil as well with the celebration. And, you know, he's having a good time because he's swinging a really good bat over the past 2 weeks, and that's undeniable. And this team just looks like they're rolling right now. And I guess a little bit of different hopes today in terms of trying to get on, you know, better lead, a better start, and an actual lead. But there's just this feeling, and we've had this feeling before in previous seasons, but it's the same thing this season. It's like, never count the Mets out. You can never count the Mets out no matter what.
Yeah, 100%. And you know, you talk about the pessimism during the game. You know, from the fourth inning to the seventh inning, there was nothing. It looked like a lost cause. And then the eighth inning turned around, and we talked about this in the pregame yesterday. There is never a time where if the game is close, and I would say about 3 runs or less, but mostly 2 runs or less, there's always confidence that the Mets are going to find a way to score runs to come back into this ballgame. Now, if they would have eventually lost in extra innings, it is what it is. Extra innings is such a crapshoot with the runner on second. That is what it is. So the comeback would have failed. But they find a way to come back into a ballgame. And, you know, you said it. Griffin Canning struggled. He was leaving a lot of pitches up. When he did get into the zone, they hit the ball. It wasn't one of his best outings. It wasn't even a good outing for him. But like you said, he battled. And all you got to do as a pitching staff, if you're the New York Mets, is keep this game within 2 runs or less. I'll even throw in 3 runs or less. And your offense, most of the time, are going to find a way to win a ball game or at least come back into the ball game. And they did it again yesterday. And Jeff McNeil, you're right, heating up. Like this guy, I mean, we did how many of us did a poll that we didn't want? A lot of people didn't want Jeff McNeil anymore. It was probably a good 80% of this fan base. And you know what? Me and you were in there. You know, we had our issues with Jeff McNeil and didn't think that, you know, that he was going to be what he is right now, to be quite honest with you. You know, we said in the beginning of the year, though, when Acuna and Beatty were struggling, how much we wanted Jeff McNeil to come back because it's a professional at bat at the plate. You know, Beatty is whatever he is at this point. He's okay right now, going through a heavy slump after even though he hit the home run. Acuna barely plays, but when he does, he's not really doing much with the bat anymore. So you need that professional at bat, and Jeff McNeil provides that. And regardless if he's batting 240 or 250 or even 260, but never going up to that 300 level or 300 plus level, he still gives you a professional at bat, and you do need that from time to time. And yes, you need that youth as well. But it's almost amazing what Jeff McNeil has been doing. Like, he's been probably the biggest shock, in my opinion, of this lineup, in my opinion.
Sorry, I was on mute there. I apologize about that. But yeah, I mean, Jeff McNeil, it's really good to see him coming around. And I don't know if it's shock for me more. And I said this on the post game show yesterday. If you guys missed it, go check that out. I think it's just like lowered expectations that Mets fans had for Jeff McNeil. I mean, at the end of the day, we all know what kind of caliber player he is and what kind of caliber player he's been at the plate, in the past. And yeah, you could talk about the shift hurting him a little bit, but he's still a professional ball player and a pretty good one at that, right? So, I don't think it's surprising to me to see him do this. It's just more so him getting out of his own head. It just seems like a very big, and you talk about the mental game a lot, especially the guy like Brandon Nimmo up at the plate, but I think that nobody is described perfectly to a T, being just, I don't even know what like, how do you say it, but like just not having that mental side of the game present at all times when things are going bad, especially, and that's Jeff McNeil. And so it's good to see him finally smiling in the post game. The bucket of empty bucket of gum over his head in the post game interview is really good to see. But that's the version of Jeff McNeil that we have come to know and love in recent years, right? Especially 2019, 2022. And it's good to see that come back. Now, I will say the approach, guess what happened in the last inning when he got that hit? It was first pitch swinging. And we know that he's not going to change up his approach. We know that he's not going to be more selective at the plate. That's not who Jeff McNeil is. You know what I mean? Has he been laying off of some balls that, I guess are borderline and that he would have been swinging at before? Yeah, I think a lot of this team has been doing that, which is why you're starting to see the Mets get into better counts and have a little bit more success than they were early on in the season. But first pitch swinging, is anybody going to complain about that? Because the end result was what it was. You know what I mean? And so we talk about process versus results, but, the results are really good to see from Jeff McNeil. I think that his process is also becoming really good in terms of the approach at the plate. So really good to see. Interesting lineup here for the New York Mets with Jeff McNeil back in the 5-hole. Brandon Nimmo, as we mentioned in pregame yesterday, it was kind of that, matchups dependency, lefty versus righty. Brandon Nimmo getting the starts in the 2-hole versus righties versus in the 5-hole versus lefties. And then Jeff McNeil gets moved as the corresponding move to that. And I see people talking about Jared Young. A lot of people, it doesn't really matter at this point. I could care less. Because to me, I don't think there's much of a drop off between Starling Marte and Jared Young at this point. And clearly, the Mets are going to play matchups. Jared Young is still a professional hitter.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a couple home runs this season. He knows how to, hit the ball the opposite way. And again, this is why I always say that the DH situation is going to be one that the Mets have to figure out, because none of these guys are game changers. Even Justin Winker, he's not really a game changer at the DH spot. So it doesn't really matter who you put in there at DH at this point. I would rather see potentially Mauricio getting more DH reps, but who are you going to plug and play aside from that with Vientos still on the IL? I think what you see is what you get, and the combinations at this point are irrelevant, especially who's DHing. It's going to be matchups based. It's Jared Young versus Starling Marte, so take your pick. It's really not that much of a difference for me.
Yeah, it's not. And I'd rather go with matchups. And with already on the mountain, Young can hit one over the fence, and that's what the Mets actually want. For the most part in the DH spot, right? I mean, who else you gonna put? You're not gonna put Marte against a right-hander, at least at this point, when you have a lefty possible power guy in Young. Like Acuna is not DH, and he's too valuable coming off the bench, in the middle or late in games. So you're not DHing him, and you got Mauricio in the lineup, you got Beatty in the lineup. So where else you going with the DH spot other than Marte? And Young is just the obvious choice. I'm not too concerned about it at all, to be quite honest with you. I like the lineup. I like that Beatty and Mauricio are 8-9. I feel like it brings a little bit of an interesting duo in the bottom of the order. And, I think this lineup is perfectly fine. I love the 1 through 4. We talked about how, based on matchups, Marte's going to be batting second against lefties and Nimmo's going to be batting second against righties. And that's just the way it's been. It's been working, right? You don't have to change something that has an obvious plus side to it. And again, once again, a hell of a lot of credit to Mendoza realizing the fact that the 2-hole was a problem with Soto not doing what he was doing and moving Soto and Alonso back to 3-4 gives the opportunity for the rightful spot in that 2 spot in Brandon Nimmo. And let's be honest, Starlin Marte as well. I think Starlin Marte has been a completely different hitter once he got put back in that 2-hole, because again, I really, and we how many times I spoke about this with the mental part of the game. It's not every player that needs that mental part of the game, but there's certain guys. I think a guy like Nimmo, a guy like Alonso, and probably a guy like Jeff McNeil. I think these guys take a lot of that pressure up to the plate where they bat. McNeil, not necessarily. I just think that he just needs to, see the ball, hit the ball, rather than trying to do too much. And he's been doing that. But Nimmo, Alonso, for sure, are 2 guys that the mental part of the game, if they just focus on what they're supposed to do, and I think Alonso in the 3-4 spot, I think it's almost similar, but I think he would be fine. But in Nimmo, for example, it's amazing what he's done. He's just, his whole thought process at the plate is completely different. Not saying that he changed his approach. I just think that it took pressure off Brandon Nimmo, not trying to be a run producer, because he can still do that in the 2 spot. Not as much as obviously in the 4 spot or the 5th spot, but it just took the pressure off of him. And you could see that he's just playing his game, and his game is doing what he's doing. He'll pop a home run every now and then, but he gets on base more. He's looking better at the plate, taking more pitches, not striking out as much as he was earlier in the season. It's a huge difference. Now, is this going to last? We'll see. But the best spot for Brandon Nimmo is in that 2-hole.
You need to get on base no matter what at all costs for Juan Soto and Pete Alonso. Yep. And I think that Brandon Nimmo understanding that, whether his approach has changed, I guess time will tell. We've gotten an early indicator, but at the very minimum, he has to be going up there thinking, I need to get on base at all costs. And I don't think that you're right. I don't think that he was taking that mindset as seriously, potentially, with the results that he was getting in the 5 spot. He was kind of thinking, that he was needing to do a little bit too much. So I think it's a really good move, and I hope to continue to see Nimmo a whole lot more in that 2 spot. But also, not to take a victory lap here, but I'm going to take one. For all the people that said that Juan Soto looks and is probably more comfortable in that 2-hole, he's doing a lot better in the 3-hole than he is in the 2-hole, right? And so, that's probably – there's stuff probably beyond just the lineup position that goes into that. But where's everybody? And I know that you were a part of that camp too, Rob, in terms of preferring Juan Soto in the 2-hole. But it's like you realize that you don't really lose out on that much value at all with that one differential spot. And in fact, you actually get more value most likely by adding another guy in Brandon Nimmo if he continues to get on base, or Marte, whoever it is, especially in that first inning, for him to come up with a runner on. You have 2 opportunities for a runner to be on base when Juan Soto steps up to the plate, especially in that first inning, then 1. And that makes all the difference in the world. So I've always been an advocate of Juan Soto batting 3. And I'm glad that Mendoza made the change, and kudos to him. It kind of gives me a little bit of a vibe of Lindor moving to the leadoff spot last year. And it's not the same, in terms of the gravity, but it's a turning point, I would say. And that is really good to see, because as soon as Lindor moved into that leadoff spot, the Mets lineup took off and he set the tone. So maybe this could be a little bit of a variation of that. And so really happy with Mendoza in that aspect as well. Absolutely correct.
It's funny because when we had our season preview, when we talked about me not liking Soto in the 3 spot and everything like that, I always thought that Nimmo was never going to see that 2-hole again, regardless of if they were going to change Soto and Alonso to 3-4. I just think that it was going to be somebody that we probably didn't expect in the tool. Everybody but Nimmo. And putting Nimmo back there, it makes more sense. And we how many times have we talked about it, right? Nimmo's perfect for the 2-hole. And you're right. I'm wrong in that situation when it comes to Soto and Alonso for sure. But I was never against making changes if things are not working out. We talked about that early in the season. I have no problem with it not working out. If it's not working out, you got to change. You can't stay status quo and think everything's going to change for the best. But Nimmo's the perfect guy for that. And making that change and then putting Nimmo there, it brings off 2022 vibes with the lineup. It really does. And obviously at the time, what was it, Marte? It was Nimmo leading off or Marte leading off. I think it was Nimmo leading off, Marte number 2, and then Lindor and then Alonso. So it kind of brings that 2022 vibe a little bit with the lineup. And it's been so much better with the lineup because it's hard to get through those first 4 guys in this lineup, especially if Jeff McNeil is in. You can just talk about top 5. And it's not easy to get through a lineup. I know Gore pitched well, but we talked about it. You don't have to beat the starter. I think too many people get focused on, oh no, how are we going to hit Gore? Who cares? He's probably going to come out in the 6th inning anyway. And I think he pitched 6 1/3 or something like that. We had him out of the game early enough where we had an opportunity to get to the bullpen. Same thing we got to do tonight against Jake Irvin. Same thing. Yeah, we don't have to beat him. We just have to get to the point where the bullpen comes in and we're close enough. Hopefully we're winning at that time. It'll be even better. But if you keep the game close, I have all confidence in the world the Mets are going to come through the bullpen.
And the good thing about yesterday's game, too, is that not only did they see a deficit very early on because Griffin Canning didn't have his best stuff and he left a couple of hanging breaking balls to CJ Abrams, who had a hell of a night, by the way. We're going to have to figure out something, against CJ Abrams today and tomorrow because this guy, I guess they sat him on Sunday ahead of this series because he wasn't doing too well. And I guess maybe he took that to heart because he went out there and had, 3 extra base hits. He went 3 for 4, home run. I mean, it was absolutely insane. So very talented baseball player. Rosario's in their lineup again today. James Wood, we know what he can do. So again, a team that is semi-young mixed in with, some veterans, and they can put up runs. And that's exactly what they did yesterday. But the really good thing to see from this lineup was them chipping back and chipping away in the preceding or the following, I should say, innings with Jeff McNeil's RBI single in the 2nd inning and Juan Soto's home run off of Mackenzie Gore in the 3rd inning. That was very nice at bat, a very nice adjustment by Juan Soto from his first at bat against Gore versus the 2nd at bat against Gore, and gave Gore a little bit of a stare down there. Ron Darling was not a fan of that. I was listening to Ron Darling. I was just like, you know what? It's just that's just the game of baseball today. I feel like, I don't know, pitchers, relievers, especially having their celebrations and going crazy after a strikeout, hitters doing the same thing. I mean, it's good for the game, makes things exciting. And there's a little bit of history there. Yesterday, did you know, Rob, yesterday there was 4 guys in the Nationals lineup, right? 3 guys in the lineup. And I think Mackenzie Gore, and they all came from the Juan Soto trade. So of course Juan Soto had to take it to heart a little bit. So yeah. I like it, and I think Juan Soto is really locking in. You're starting to see that confidence, that aura, like people like to say, from Juan Soto, and that's a dangerous sign for the rest of the league. And it goes to show you, because there was a players poll that was, I guess, just put out today talking about who would you not want to face in a Game 7 situation in the World Series. And despite his slow start, everybody voted pretty much. The overwhelming majority was Juan Soto still. And that's coming from players around the league. So it's just something to show for and to tell us that we haven't seen anything yet. We haven't seen anything yet from this guy. And that's the crazy thing.
Yeah. And I've been saying it for a while. It's not about the Juan Soto regular season. It really, look, do you want him to play well? Obviously, you got to get to the playoffs, right? He'll still have really good numbers. He'll still be impactful on this team. Even when he wasn't hitting, he was still walking, getting in front of, getting on base for Pete Alonso when he was red hot early in the season, when he was absolutely terrible with the bat. So even with him not hitting at the time, he was still being productive because he was getting on for the hottest guy in the lineup right in front of him. And he is prime time. He is Deion Sanders in baseball. That's what he is. He is a guy that steps up at the biggest moment. When you need a big hit, there is nobody on this team that I want at the plate And I know some people are going to argue about Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso has good postseason numbers, but he does not have Juan Soto numbers. Juan Soto has excellent numbers with the Nationals, even with the Padres, where it didn't seem like anybody cared about him on the Padres. He had really good numbers. Go back to 2022 and what he did against the Mets, right? Against with the Padres, he played extremely well in the playoffs. He better numbers with the Nationals, and obviously he did it with the Yankees. The guy steps up in the biggest moments. That's like when players talk about or vote for that, listen to it, right? These guys are all buddies, and most of them are friends, right? They're not going to bullshit anybody. They're going to say it how, especially with these votes, right? Juan Soto is probably the most scariest person at the plate in the postseason, and it's dangerous. And we got one of those guys. And you go even lock in Pete Alonso, who's had postseason numbers. I know he's only been in the postseason twice in his career, but he has really good postseason numbers. And Pete Alonso and Juan Soto back to back is a dangerous game to play. And by the way, with that stare with Soto to Gore when he hit that home run, and even before he hit that home run, I mean, that was a stare of like, don't fuck with me type of stare. Like that was a scare with like, if I'm a pitcher, I don't care if I'm Gore or not. I know I'm good, but like, goddamn, the guy walked and stared me down halfway down the first baseline after he hit that ball because he knew it was gone. Now I didn't know it was gone off the bat, but again, when Soto hits that ball with that backspin, it's amazing how that ball just travels like crazy. And again, hitting into that part of the ballpark in Citi Field is not a cheap home run by any means, and that's his best asset at hitting the ball. When he goes oppo, even if it's not a home run, that is when Juan Soto is at his best. Not when he's pulling the ball like crazy. Like a lot of his home runs have been pull shots, or most of his home runs have been pull shots. Those don't excite. I mean, obviously the home runs excite me, but those are the ones where you could see him pulling off and he hit the ball. He got the barrel on the ball. But when he's going to opposite field, that's when he's feeling good. And you can tell just by the vibes, just by the aura that he brings to the plate, staring down the pitchers, doing the shuffle, walking halfway down the first baseline, staring at Gore. That's when you know he's feeling so comfortable at the plate and he's enjoying himself. It sucks when your team is winning and you're not helping out. I don't care who you are. Yes, you're happy that the team's winning, but when you don't feel a part of that winning because you're not doing your job, you feel miserable. You feel like you're not doing what you're supposed to do to help this team. And I think that's a big reason why he looked upset and sad, so to speak, according to Yankee fans, because he felt like he wasn't helping the team win, at least to the point where he believed he was helping the team win. Even though if you really look deep down in the stats, especially the walks, he was helping the team, but not how he felt he was helping the team. And now you see he knows he's helping this team now in the right way that he believes he can help this team. And it's a whole different vibe. And everybody's involved now. Even Jeff McNeil, everybody's making jokes where Jeff McNeil is finally smiling. So that's how you know things are good. When Jeff McNeil smiles and not slamming helmets and bats on the ground, on the grass, when he's not doing well. So the vibes are good right now. We're on the verge of 20 games over 500. And by the way, we're on the verge again of winning another series. That's even more important than anything else. Is even though the Braves and the Phillies are getting back on track winning wise, the Mets gained a half a game since being off. So they're 4.5 games up. They're still, if I'm not mistaken, the Braves are 14 games out. So we're in a very good spot here. You keep on winning. This is what I say. Keep on winning series. It's very hard for teams to gain much games on you if you continue to win series or even split 4-game series. It's hard to do that. You have to lose like 4 of 6. 5 of 6, and a team like the Phillies got to go, 6-0 to actually catch back up to you. That's the beauty where the Mets are right now, and they got to continue that success right now, Chris.
Yeah, we always say that it's 162 is always about winning series. Sweeps are nice, but win the series and you'll be a-okay. Which that's the situation the Mets are in tonight too. They have an opportunity to do that because you take game one, and we saw that in the Rockies series as well. I mean, it was a nail biter, right, in the Rockies series, and they took care of business in the last 2 games for the sweep. So hopefully something similar happens in this series, but. Last year, I made multiple streams, and we talked about this probably until everyone's heads exploded listening to us talk about this. But Pete Alonso runs the scoring position last year was brutal. This year, I know I kind of mentioned it a couple weeks ago, but just to, I guess, rehash it, 365 batting average with a 1255 OPS with runners in scoring position. 2 outs, runners in scoring position. 345 batting average with just over 1,000 OPS. And in high leverage situations, according to Baseball Reference, what they deem as high leverage, he is batting 422 with an over 1,400 OPS. And that is what you call that's like what makes you a clutch player. And you
Yep.
saw that happen last night. 2 outs, Juan Soto did the job, right? That's what you brought him in here to do. Pete Alonso still hunting for that next contract. Go out there and replicate that. That's why you're 3-4 in the lineup, especially when the tough situations come up in the game. 2 out, runners in scoring position, get the game tying, run home with an RBI, base knock. He did it. Got thrown out. We won't talk about that because that ended well for the Mets. But that's what I like to see. I really like to see that. And against a new pitcher, albeit, right, against Kyle Finnegan, who just came into the game to face Pete Alonso at that righty on righty matchup, 2-pitch pitcher, Alonso stares at strike one and doesn't let the next strike go by. He attacks it. It was beautiful to see. And I think that just again, I know that we've been giving Pete Alonso immense credit so far this season, but we need to continue to talk about that because not only are the face value numbers great, right? What you see in the front page of his Baseball Reference page, but if you look at the splits, high leverage, runners in scoring position, all that, also really, really, really good.
Yeah. And, only 2 weeks ago, the Mets were 29th in baseball with the average and runners in scoring position. And you know where they are now? 20th. That's how fast it takes. 20th.
Big leap.
That's a huge leap. Like they were 20, they're batting 249 with runners in scoring position. And they were batting in the 220s about 2 weeks ago. So that's a huge jump. And again, that coincides with Juan Soto being better at with that. Pete Alonso started to get hot at that time. Nimmo being in the number 2 spot. Jeff McNeil starting to get hot. All that. And look what happens. When your big guys, the main guys, start doing what they're supposed to do, they become the team we expect. And we all agree here, they still haven't hit the apex yet. They still haven't hit that tier where like Juan Soto's hot, Pete Alonso's hot, Nimmo's, I would say, lukewarm, and Lindor has been a little bit off. But again, with that toe, who knows day to day with him? But he still has been productive enough to help us win games overall. I mean, this is what we wanted to see, and they're still not there yet, which is amazing to think that they can be so much better than this. And we talked about it. We should be 23, 24, even 25 games over 500 with the stupid games we lost because of certain offensive numbers, just a couple of weeks ago. And it's amazing to turn around from 29th to 20th in 2 weeks is a huge jump. It's a 20-point difference in average where runners in scoring position, and there's no mistake about it of what it is. It's McNeil getting better, Nimmo getting better, and Juan Soto getting better, helping out Alonso here. That's the big jump in average. And
hopefully,
I'm sorry.
And hopefully when Mark Vientos comes back, because he's taking on-field swings in batting practice, trying to come back from that hamstring injury, hopefully he just skyrockets as well, because that's going to help this lineup out even more. And especially if you plug him in, if you keep Jeff McNeil in that 5 spot, if he continues to hit this way, I think Mark Vientos in the 6 hole is a perfect, fill-in right there. And then you have, a combination of, I don't know who will go down at that point. Probably Acuna, if I'm not mistaken, but you'll have a combination 7, 8, 9 to your liking.
You think that Acuna would be the one sent down? That was my next question.
I don't know. It all depends. This question all depends on how confident this team is in Brett Beatty versus Ronnie Mauricio and who they'd rather have. Honestly, I could see a situation as well where Ronnie Mauricio goes back down, but it's going to be Mauricio or Acuna. Or maybe Jared Young. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
know
point.
what?
Yeah,
if Jared Young, like, sure. Yeah, so like there's options. What I'll say, I'm not gonna pencil it in as I'm 50-50 on Acuna. That's just the first guy that popped into mind because we haven't seen him start a game in ages. But I do know the value that he brings is just kind of limiting in this role that he's in. he's absolutely needed out there
He-
for those situations, but it's just
Correct.
limiting.
Yeah, and like I said, like I want him to get better overall offensively, and it's hard to put him in a lineup when when guys are actually looking better at the plate and all that. But he's so valuable off the bench. Like that's the issue. Like we want him to grow as a player, especially offensively. But when he's coming in pinch run situations, defensive replacement, or even pinch hit in certain appearances late in games, he's so valuable in that aspect of the game that you're kind of hurting his growth. But again, you got to win ball games, so you got to do what you got to do. And Jerry Young might be the odd man out here, but it will be interesting when Winker comes back as well. What the hell are they going to do? Like, it's a great problem to have, and that's when that stuff happens, and when it lines up, and Winker comes back and all that, we'll see what goes on. But I guess it depends on who's doing it, because Beatty's not coming off this team, guys. I just want everybody to know he has no more options. So unless the Mets DFA him, which I find that very hard to believe, they're going to spill out every ounce of Brett Beatty they possibly can before they make that move. There is no possible way that Beatty's going to be anywhere near DFA'd, because he's not going to get through waivers at all. There's no way. Somebody will pick him up.
It's not an option.
Exactly. So like what could they do? What can they do? They're going to keep him on this roster. It's like a Rule 5 pick. Exactly what Beatty is at this point. Unless he's completely bad and he was what he was earlier in the season, he's on this team. So it is between Mauricio, Young, and Acuna, and we'll see, what the decision is, because it probably will be Young, but damn, you got a lot of middle infielders. You got a lot of infielders.
I was gonna say, you got a surplus of those infielders at that point when Vientos comes back, and it just makes the deadline talk that we had yesterday. I released a video about it earlier today, that much more interesting. I talked about Jarren Duran. I talked a little bit about Cedric Mullins on my video today. If you missed it, link's going to be in the description of my stream right now on my channel. But I figured I'd hop on a pre-recorded video, 13 minutes long, talking about it, because Jarren Duran he would be such a game changer, man. And at that point, right, you add more speed to your lineup to make other guys a little bit more expendable. And then we're talking about Jose Siri potentially rejoining as well as a guy that you can plug and play as a defensive replacement. Assuming that he's still on the team, right? If they don't flip Jose Siri, because even as soon as they traded for Siri, a lot of people are saying, oh, this guy is just going to be here for half a season, if that, and he's going to be flipped for something else in a bigger trade, which could be a possibility. But again, you take a look at that speed, and then you'll have, at that point, if you do go get an outfielder like that, then you'll have Tyrone Taylor off of your bench as well. But the speed factor just is such a key point for me in going to get a player like that. So I talked about it. You guys can go and hear me talk about it some more over there. But that kind of the conversation plays out with a surplus of infielders at that point.
I was just gonna bring up, because I know you did a video earlier today, and I was gonna be like, what does a surplus of infielders mean? And then I was gonna make you go right to your video and talk about it. I know it was gonna be a perfect leeway, but you did it. It's all right. It's all right.
I got too excited, Rob. I got too excited.
Yeah, that's right. Because I was like, because I watched your video, of course, and I agree with a lot of it. Said the surplus is going to be astronomical. It's not you have 3 infielders in your top 10 that haven't even hit the major leagues yet. That are waiting around doing nothing. You got 2 potential outfielders, if you want to call Ryan Clifford outfield, infield. You got a couple, you got Gilbert, you got a lot. I know you got pitching prospects as well, but they do have a surplus that they could get rid of. And I truly believe this, and I know this might piss some of my fans off. If Acuna gets sent down, he is trade bait number 1. Be quite honest about that. I know that I know that pisses off some Met fans, but again, at some point, and now again, it depends on what you're going to need at the deadline. And we talked about this already yesterday, and we're not going to get too deep into it because there's no need to. You can just watch the pregame show yesterday, and we get into it a lot more. The fact that Acuna hasn't been playing much, I think, or starting for that matter, is that I don't think they want to hurt his value offensively when it comes to trade value for other teams. I think that's part of the discussion internally, that he can still help this team off the bench, by being a pinch runner, pinch hitter, defensive replacement, and not lose his value. He can only increase his value, in my opinion, in those areas. And he still needs a lot of work with the bat. You're not going to put him out there and make him fail at the major league level with the bat. I mean, you're going to play him from time to time, but you're not going to expose him to the point where teams are going to lose value, probably have a lower value with him overall with his bat. And guy, they're gonna the teams are gonna want to trade for him. You got to keep that value up. I know that's kind of crazy to think, but with the Mets being 19 or almost at the point of being 20 games over 500, the organization has to think about that. And I think that has been their plan over the last couple of weeks, because we've been wondering why Acuna hasn't been playing much. Right? It doesn't make sense. Why not play? Before Mauricio was here, Acuna could have been playing every day with Beatty. You could have just mixed and matched with McNeil around everywhere. But now McNeil is going, Acuna really doesn't have a chance to play. And that's the other frustrating thing. They would even put him in center field where they talked about putting him if need be. And that's the thing. It's like, there's got to be something else internally that they're talking about with Acuna that is leading to this. And I think it's a big reason why is that Acuna is probably on the fast track of being one of those guys in a package for whatever player we're going to talk about down the road. And that could be a strong possibility, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that too. There's just a lot of different scenarios in which this could play out in terms of the personnel. And I guess having options is better than not having any options, right? I mean, it's interesting. It's an interesting thing to talk about. But yeah, I could definitely see the Acuna situation playing out that way as well. And I know he hasn't really done all that well as of recent, but even I'm a little bit shocked that he's not getting as much playing time as I would have envisioned. But Mauricio came in, took that kind of role right away, and Brett Beatty, since he's been back, has also been playing pretty consistently, and I guess Acuna's getting the short end of the stick in that manner. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I know people in the comments are saying, isn't what did Patrick say? He said, "What's wrong with Acuna off the bench? Nothing. We just said it. He's fine off the bench. He's valuable off the bench." And then Dolo said we trade him and he'll become a superstar. Who cares? I think we're too focused on that. I don't care what they become off the Mets. If we bring in a player that helps this team win, ultimately that's all that should matter, right? You traded Kelnick, right, for the hopes of Diaz being a big part of and obviously Cano at the time, but it was mostly Diaz being a part of a championship. Doesn't matter what Kelnick did. Same thing with PCA for that matter. I didn't like that trade overall. I mean, I like the Mets actually went after something, but it wasn't for the right team to make that type of trade. PCA is a star. But if the Mets would have won in 2021, nobody would have gave a shit. Nobody cares. We got to stop worrying about them becoming a star, because more often than not, guys, they won't. That's the difference. More often than not, they won't even be good players, let alone superstars. We're too focused on that. We got to stop. Worry about your team. If you get players in here to help your team be better than they already are, that should be the focus. Stop worrying about who's becoming a star. If I have to hear another tweet or see another tweet from a Met fan being annoying about PCA and what he's doing, your team's almost 20 games over 500 and you're worrying about Pete Crow Armstrong? Did we care about him when he wasn't playing well, when the Mets faced him, when the Mets beat the Cubs? No, nobody cared, right? Who cares? When we play the Cubs, we can talk about it. Other than that, who gives a shit? It's so annoying with certain Met fans. Like, who cares? I don't care if Acuna becomes his brother. It does not matter. If the Mets win, all bets are off. And by the way, when we trade Acuna to somewhere, where is he going to go? Let's say we get Alcantara. We're going to trade him to the Marlins. What are the Marlins going to do over the next 10 years? Probably nothing. They'll probably trade him when he's going to be a free agent so we can get him back. How about that? We're trading these guys to bad teams or teams that are not there yet over the next year, 2 or 3 years. Why do we care? Like, we have to understand that, guys. Are we trying to win, or we're trying to bitch and moan about prospects that could become superstars, which most of them don't?
Situations change, Rob. This is the luxury of why the Mets did what they did in 2023 by selling off that team and realizing, like, listen, we're going to see 2024 how, like, what track this organization is on, especially with the core players, right? And we're going to evaluate that. So that's going to be and what they did in 2024 was ultimately going to have an immediate and direct impact on what they did this past offseason, this deadline, etc., with the prospects. You think if the Mets, went out there and, I guess, failed last year, we'd be talking about this? We might not even be talking about the Mets going all in for Juan Soto if they have
Right.
another failure, if they had another failure of a season in 2024 like they did in 2023. So all of this to say is that, them going out there and doing that in 2023 was awesome because it sets up the possibility to flip these prospects like we all were hoping was the case back then when this was first happening, because we wanted this organization to bounce back and be in a situation at least in 2025, if not 2024, to be contenders, which is exactly what the Mets are right now. So this was all part of the plan. And I think that people lose sight of that fact because they've gotten accustomed to, I guess people get attached to certain players, right? I'm not attached to any player, over the other. If they help the Mets win, that's what I care about. I do prefer seeing certain players over another player, right?
Sure.
But if ultimately the other player, and I'm wrong about it, right? And these guys are helping the team win, and they're helping us get a better player that helps the fit of this organization moving forward, of course, I'm going to celebrate that and I'm going to be all in for that. But what I will say, going back to the Acuna discussion, is that I don't think, and this is where I agree with you, that Acuna could definitely be the guy that they're like, okay, listen, we're going to dangle out there and see if he could be a part of a trade, if not maybe the main piece in a trade, because I'm sure some organizations still believe in this guy if they give him a chance every day. Because I don't think David Stearns would keep him on this roster if the overall objective was to keep him in this organization. And I talk about the limiting factor. Yes, what Patrick said in the chat is absolutely true. There are some guys that have a defined role, even if it's a lesser role, and that's that. But when you're talking about a player of his age at this point, and I guess his potential, I don't think the Mets and David Stearns would stunt that growth if he was meant to be in this organization long term. So by
100%.
keeping him on the roster right now, I think that it's you're diminishing his role for a purpose, and the purpose could be what you also said about not losing value in an everyday role, and it could definitely play out in that scenario. So I just wanted to say that because I don't think the Mets would even keep him on this roster, the Major League roster, if the overall plan was him to stick around even past the deadline and potentially be an everyday player, let's say in the second half of the season or whenever. You know what I mean? I think that
100%.
that's a little bit fishy to me too.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, guys. It's not like the Mets didn't give Acuna the opportunity. He had the second base job. He lost it again. That's on him. Sorry. Everybody talked about, he was bored in the minor leagues, and once he gets to the majors, he's going to be a different player. He has no home runs. He hasn't shown much with the bat. More than we needed to see more with that with the bat. And again, I don't think he's a finished product, but I don't think he's going to be his brother. But even again, still, he can benefit this team on the bench while not losing value. I do that until the time comes when you have to make that decision to open up a roster spot for Vientos, or if Acuna still finds his way on this team still after Vientos comes back, when Winker or Siri come back. Like, that's fine. But that's where I think Met fans, because there were Met fans the other day that were talking about, why don't we trade Beatty? His value's high. Well, you're doing the same thing because Beatty has been valuable for this team. So if you want to do that, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I already said that. I don't like trading off my Major League roster if Beatty's a big part of this roster. But the Mets already told you that Beatty's a big part of this roster just by how they're playing him and how they're situationally playing him over Acuna. Even when Beatty was going through this little slump again, they could easily put Acuna back. But they trust Beatty over Acuna at this point. They're not saying that they don't value Acuna. But right now, Beatty can just hit a home run over the wall. Acuna has not shown that. And I still think that's a big key with Stearns. He likes power. Is Acuna valuable? Sure. in certain parts of a role, but he's a role player at this point. He is a situational player at this point. Beatty can hit the ball over the wall when he's 0 for 10. Acuna is 0 for 10. If you don't get on base, he's not valuable. That's the difference right now when it comes to the overall spectrum of what the Mets are looking at. And Stearns is a thinker. And that's why I brought that up about the Acuna situation, not losing his value, not playing him so much. I think Stearns is a heavy, deep thinker. And I think he's thinking about that. Because if you can avoid trading your top prospect pitchers, which I think Stearns is trying to avoid to trade, Acuna is going to be number one, along with Jet Williams, that is going to be part of a package, or at least one of them in a package. And if you can try to get Acuna to get pushed out, the Mets clearly value Jet Williams as well, if you haven't noticed. Yeah. So that's something where I think, because Jet Williams shows a lot more promise power-wise than Acuna. So I think there's a lot to look at with the deep thinking inside of Stearns and his internal thought process when it comes to certain prospects or certain players that are already on this team that are considered a top prospect.
Yeah, there's so many. Listen, I see Truman here in the chat too, and Truman's been saying this since yesterday. If you have any idea or thought about the thought of Paul Skeens, please erase it from your memory, because this is
makes no sense.
The Pirates aren't letting him go. Like, come on. That's all I'll say about that. But yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Before we get, before we end the stream, I wanted to talk about two things. First of all, the bullpen last night was tremendous. I mean,
Garza.
Reed Garrett, Edwin Diaz, Justin Garza. This is why I don't really care at this point which prospects get traded, because I trust David Stearns to make the right move and let go of the right guys, even given the surplus. Like, where did this guy Justin Garza come from? I know he came from the San Francisco Giants recently. Like, I get that, but it's like David Stearns just like amazing. This guy's out there throwing 98 miles per hour with just ridiculous off-speed movement, getting amped up, wanting to go out there for a second inning before the Mets offense, does what it does, and they have Edwin Diaz out there instead. Justin Garza is out there pitching high leverage in a high leverage situation. Same thing with Luis Castillo. Where the hell did that guy come from, too? Yeah. I know he's been on the team for, like,
it's crazy.
David Stearns is a freaking wizard, dude.
It's amazing. Wizard. He was in the pitching lab for 1 day in the Mets organization. 1 day. And he was buried in the Giants organization. Hasn't pitched in professional baseball in 2 years since all these injuries. Like, it's freaking, I can't question pitching anymore with David Stearns. It's amazing. Crazy. And speaking of the pitching, what about David Stearns today and your final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Stearns, got to trust in Stearns no matter what. At this point, he's earned the benefit of the doubt. But we do got to talk about David Peterson, because David Peterson is on the mound. David Peterson has been really good, especially in his last start. I mean, I know he gave up 3 earned runs to the Dodgers, and that was his second time seeing the Dodgers in a span of a week. But, he went over seven innings or more in both of his starts against the Los Angeles Dodgers, which is pretty hard to do. He's been giving the New York Mets length. He's been pretty consistent in terms of giving up between anywhere, 1, 2, 3 earned runs and limiting it at that. And I believe of the 67 games or 68 games, this is game 68 of the 67 games that the Mets played, if I heard the broadcast correctly, only one time did a Mets starter this season give up more than 4 runs. Is that what the broadcast said?
I believe they say something of that. I was at work at the time when that happened, when they said that, but I think I heard that, and I think it was Howie Rose on the radio broadcast that I was listening to. He said the same thing, and I think it's similar to that. So yeah, that's insane. What's going on with this Mets starting pitching staff?
I mean, this staff is absolutely crazy. David Peterson is pitching to the tune of a 2.8 ERA. He's given the Mets length. He's really picking up where he left off last season when he took that immense stride, which is exactly what this rotation needed, coupling with the fact that Senga is now back and healthy, and he is a top of the league ERA leader himself. So it's really good stuff to build off of. Jake Irvin's going to be tough. He has had success at times against this Mets lineup in the past. Jake Irvin struggled over his past 2 starts as well. I believe one of those starts he gave up 6 runs, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, it doesn't really matter. He's a talented pitcher. Another tough test for the New York Mets lineup. You've seen him before. Make the adjustments, and it's all about adjustments from game to game, at bat to at bat. Keep making the adjustments. Go take a series and win a ball game. I'm not available for the post game. I'm not going to be available for the pregame tomorrow either. I know it's a day game, but I will be available. I'm not sure if you are, Rob, for the post game tomorrow. So that'll be the next stream for me on my channel.
There you go. And yeah, absolutely. I can't do a post game either, but I will be doing a pre and post tomorrow for the game as well. Chris said it with David Peterson. Keep this game close, because if you can't hit Jake Irvin, the Mets will hit the Mets bullpen. And that's all you got to do in this case. And I'm quite confident the Mets will come through in this game and win another series. That would be 20 games over 500 for the New York Mets. Peterson, Irvin, no post game tonight, guys. But thank you for tuning in to the Amazing Mets pregame show. Let's see what the Mets can do here at home once again. Game 2 of the series. Enjoy the game, guys. Let's go Mets. And we'll see you tomorrow, guys. Have a good night.
Go Mets.
Seven train rumble, headed to the field. Orange and blue vibes, the energy revealed. Brooklyn to Queens, repping both